Never know if we sound stupid or not.
I'm sure we do.
Welcome to the Vicis Interimo 30 Minutes to Kill podcast.
Portions of this podcast are made possible through generous donations from patrons like @LonelyBob and Big Al V. If you aren't a patron yet and still want to help, you can like, comment, or subscribe and help the podcast grow.
You are listening to the Vicis Interimo show, 30 Minutes to Kill, more or less. A horror entertainment show featuring horror, suspense, and psychological thrillers. You can find us at iTunes, Stitchers, Podomatic, and just about anywhere. Type in VICISINTERIMO. I am your host, Michael Mad Saxton Jones, with my lovely wife and co-host, Lori. Say hello, Lori.
Hello.
We generally have 4 segments to each show: Laid to Rest, a movie review, Garbage In, Garbage Out, and Crawling Chaos. In our Laid to Rest, we recap or go over any information we may have missed over the previous show. A featured movie review. This week's movie is Trailer Park of Terror.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Available on Vudu, is that correct?
Yeah, for free.
Okay. Laid to Rest. We did that. That's the review. Then Garbage In, Garbage Out. We talk about any movie, TV shows, things, books, anything we may have caught over the past week or so. And we end with a Crawling Chaos, a topic or factoid that we have never talked about on the show before, sometimes silly, sometimes serious, most always chaotic. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Just listening to you do your intro.
All right.
What's wrong with us?
There's nothing wrong with me. So anyhow, let's do that Laid to Rest. So actually, before we get into the show proper, if you are a patron of the podcast, go ahead and go to Patreon. There should be a link there for you. It's nothing much, but this is a patron-preferred cast, or will include some patron-preferred comments or whatever. I mean, it's personal stuff that just doesn't necessarily need to go into the regular Garbage In, Garbage Out, I think. So, yeah. So if you're a friend of the podcast or a patron, definitely go there, check out that link. It might not be worth it. I don't know. Whatever. For Laid to Rest, really the only thing that I had was that I wanted to mention the fact that it was the Anastasi, not the Ananaku, that were mentioned last week in the Darkness podcast.
You mean not the Anunnaki?
Okay, there we go. Not the Anunnaki. That's ancient aliens. That's something else entirely. The Anastasi are the spirit, the Indian tribe, the spirit, and so that was my
right.
Probably nobody else is going to notice that unless they are into ancient aliens or.
I noticed it right away.
Well, you should have stopped me right then.
I'm very familiar with the Anunnaki. I tried.
Okay.
And you were like, "No, that's what they said."
I thought that was,
okay.
but maybe.
Right.
Well, my brain just crossed that out. Anyhow, so what? Anything else for Laid to Rest that you want to cover?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, let's get on with this one because, man, we've got plenty to say. This movie has it covered from A to Z.
Pretty much.
Everybody around here knows Norma, the trailer park queen.
How sweet you are behind that
You know, the weaker ones among us would have you believe that violence never pays. I say, therein lies salvation.
We're all about challenging these kids' limitations. We show them there's nothing they can't do without faith and God's help.
They're dragging us up to the mountains and trying to save our souls.
Come on!
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Everybody head for the trailer park. There won't be any freaks there.
We could really use some help.
Oh, if you're looking for help, you came to the right place. Let's tell a scary story. Well, once upon a time, there was a lovely princess, and she lived in a kingdom ruled by evil men.
Alex?
Amber.
You are so dead, bitch!
You got that backwards, darling.
Howdy.
You know you wanna touch her.
Bible says having sex before marriage is a sin.
Hold on a sec. Hold on. It's time for my close-up.
Beneath the sun, the darkest day has come. God! What are you?
I'm not the girl you fell in love with. That changed. Did I scare you?
Okay, so Trailer Park of Terror. This thing's rated R. Doesn't take long to figure that out.
A hard R or a soft R? For me, a hard. You know what? Here's my criteria for.
I can't believe you're even saying that.
Well, okay, yeah, whatever. Okay, then that's a hard R, I guess.
You get okay.
Well,
I'm very interested. What?
Okay, so my criteria is you have to have cussing and boobs and sex and everything in there to get a hard R. If it's just language, there's plenty in here. You know what? Do the description first.
Okay.
All right.
6 troubled high school students and their chaperone are returning from a retreat when their bus crashes, stranding them in the middle of trailer park hell. Literally. Without warning, hillbilly zombies looking for fun begin slaughtering the teens in gruesome fashion. With a rockin' Southern Fried soundtrack, top-notch special effects, and a devilish sense of humor, Trailer Park of Terror, based on the Imperium comic book series, is nasty fun for the hardcore horror fan. And I read that synopsis off of voodoo.com because I liked it much better than the Netflix synopsis. Yeah. What?
I'm sorry, just because this, generally speaking, isn't a movie that we would cover, but we picked this one strictly, I don't want to say at random. I mean, we had a few to choose from, but without knowing anything about it, and we went ahead and picked this one.
Right. Well, Trailer Park of Terror sounds ridiculous.
It sounded promising.
I knew it would be ridiculous, and it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous.
It had something for the gore hounds.
Yes.
It had something for everybody, I think.
Yeah, and it's definitely a hard R. I'm not sure. I mean, it had all of those things you mentioned in there. It had a lot of language. A lot of language. And I did say that it had things in there from A to Z, starting with Asian stereotypes. B, we had butchery. C, we had cannibalism. D, we had decapitation. I probably could go through the entire alphabet and find one word to describe one of the scenes in this movie at least. Yes.
Definitely, because it did have everything going on there. Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Go ahead.
I'm just going to say that I'm going to have a complex time reviewing this because there are parts that I liked about it. There are parts that were exceptional. And where it lacked, it was in story. But but even that was there. I mean, it was all there. But I mean, I would recommend this, but I would recommend it to the gore hound. I would recommend it to people that were into, I'm going to, in air quotes here, say hardcore horror. Because some of it was just, a lot of it was just gross, over the top kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it also went so far over the top that it was, went into that ridiculous splatterpunk horror type stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, it was kind of complex in that.
It was for this kind of movie, because this is not my kind of movie. I'm just going to say that. I don't like, that kind of gruesome killings. A lot of people love this movie because of the creative, kind of gross way that some people were taken out.
Well,
that's not what I look for. So
right.
That's the part that I did not care for.
Right.
I do realize that we do a horror podcast. I do understand that.
Right.
I love a scary story. I love a horror story. I love a good story. So there's always a time and place for the gore, but in this kind of a movie, you're going to get a lot of that. And for this kind of movie, I'm going to keep saying that, this kind of movie. I don't know.
Because what kind is this? I was watching it and thinking to myself, I have a hard time classifying this. Was it a slasher film? Was it a supernatural horror? Was it a zombie film?
It was all of those
genre?
Things.
Yeah.
It was all of those things rolled into one. What I noticed, what people were calling it, in a lot of the reviews, they were pretty much sticking it into the B-movie category.
Oh, but it was well done.
I'm going to say that was what they were saying. Like, this was really great for a B-movie. So it's like a really awesome B-movie.
The review even mentioned this and stuff. It had its built-in Southern soundtrack because
all that original music and
one
stuff.
of the people in there had it set up on his trailer like a stage with big amps and just loved to play. And we even had Trace Atkins in here.
Well, yeah, they used his name. He was in it very little.
Very little, sure.
Yeah.
But it's funny. And there's a couple other character actors in there and stuff folks that you would recognize. But it was just so all over the place, but in a good-ish way.
Yeah. I didn't like the gruesomeness of the kills.
Because
aside from that, like, I really enjoyed it a lot.
There was.
Well, and, normally I wouldn't with, quote, this kind of movie.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I mean, there were things that bordered on torture porn to me, sort of. If it had been that way all the way through it, it would have been like another Hostel or something of that nature to me.
Yeah, it would have been spoiled.
But
for us soft folk.
But there were it wasn't all the way through, and so that made it more bearable. And I mean, there was a couple of times when we turned away from the screen because I was like, "Oh, I don't want to see this," but it wasn't that bad. But then again, like I said, so much of it happened to be over the top too, that you got to a point where it's like, "Oh, okay."
Well, it wasn't so much the visual. It's never the visual that's awful. It's just the
gruesomeness of that happening to a quote-unquote innocent person?
Yeah. I mean, and I could tell they tried to... let's talk just a little bit about the story.
Okay.
Because the story starts, it's 1981.
1981 seems to be a theme for this podcast.
Okay, it does?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, when we get to Freaks and Geeks.
Oh, there you go. So 1981, trailer park. I was like, what is up with this trailer park? Because it seemed like all the people that live there are kind of like they're stuck there with each other in some way. You get more of that later. Also, the story kind of so the story starts in 1981.
Mm-hmm.
We're introduced to the main character, I guess, one of the main characters, a girl named Norma, who lives